In this video, we're going to complete the KutaSoftware Infinite PreAlgebra free worksheet, multiplying decimals. Our instructions for this worksheet are to find each product. And remember, from multiplying integers, a negative times a negative is a positive times a positive equals a positive times a positive is a negative, and a positive times a negative is a negative. Let's jump into number 1. Now, if we were adding them vertically, I would say to line up the decimal place. However, when multiplying, it doesn't matter whether we line up the decimal place or not. So, for number 1, I'm going to have a negative times a negative, so we know that results in a positive. So I'll make a note to myself that we are dealing with a positive answer. Now, the order in which you multiply doesn't matter, so I like to look at how many numbers I have in each value. So I have 2 separate digits in number 1, and I have 3 different digits in that second number for number 1. So I'm going to start with the one with 3 digits just because I think that makes multiplying a little easier. So I'm going to write 4.87 or 4 and 87 hundredths, and I'll multiply that by 5.5. 7 times 5 is 35. Write the 5, carry the 3. 8 times 5 is 40. Plus 3 is 43, so I'll write the 3, carry the 4. 4 times 5 is 20. Plus 4 will give us 24. And then remember, put my placeholder 0 because I'm not dealing with this column anymore. I'm dealing with this place now. So 7 times 5 again is 35. So I'll write my 5. These were my old values, so I'll write my new values atop that. 3. So 7 times 5 again is 35. Write my 5, carry my 3. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 3 is 43. So carrying my 4, I have 4 times 5, which is 20, plus the 4 that I carried will be 24. Now I'm going to add this all together. 5 plus 0 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 4 plus 3 is 7. 2 plus 4 is 6. And 0 plus 2 is 2. Now, I know that 4.87 times 5.5 will not give me a number that's 26,785. So we have to take into account the decimals. And the neat trick when multiplying is, however many decimal places that we took into account when multiplying, we will do that same number for our product. So we have 2 places for 4.87, and we have 1 place for 5.5. So those 2 places plus 1 is 3 places. So going 1, 2, 3 places over in my result will give me 26.785, or 26 and 785 thousandths. So 26 and 785 thousandths is my solution in number 1. And it's my full solution because my answer is indeed positive. Now I think number 1 was actually a tricky one to start with, so let's go ahead and move on to number 2. So if we were very confused on number 1, continue on in this worksheet and then work back and try number 1 again. So in number 2, we have 1.7 times negative 2.1. A positive times negative, we know our number is going to be negative. So 1.7 times 2.1, I'll multiply those. So I'm starting with my rightmost column, so I'm going to multiply 1 to 7, and then 1 to 1. And then I'll use my number 2 to multiply 2 to 7, and then 1 to 2. But when I go to use 2, I have to keep track of the fact that it's no longer the rightmost digit, so I'll have a 0 as my placeholder. So again, we'll start by multiplying 1 by 7, which gives us 7. And then 1 times 1 is 1. And we'll be adding that to, remember, now that we're starting with my 2, I need that placeholder 0. So we'll do 2 times 7, which is 14. So I'll put 4, carry my 1. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So I'll have 17 plus 340, which will be 357. However, remember, we had decimals, and how many decimal places did we use? 1 for our first number and 1 for our second number. So that's 2 decimal places we're going to move over. But remember, that answer is negative, so we'll have negative 3.57 as our solution in number 2. Negative 3 and 57/100ths. In number 3, we have 0.2 times negative 1.6. A positive times negative, we know our result is going to be negative. So I'll make a note of that so we don't forget. Now, 0.2 times negative 1.6, 0.2 times 1.6, I'm going to reverse this multiplication, doing it the other way, because I know this 0 is just a placeholder. So I'm going to do 1.6 times 0.2, except I'm going to write 0.2 as just 0.2. But I need to remember that it is a decimal. So I'll do 6 times 2, which is 12, carry my 1, and then 1 times 2, which is 2, plus 1 will get me 3. And because I only had 1 digit in the second number that was multiplied, I don't need to worry about having a placeholder 0 and then trying to multiply the rest. I can just do this in one fell swoop. So now, how many decimal places do we need to account for? Well, there is 1 in the first number and 1 in the second number. So that's 2 decimal places that we need to take into account. So 0.32 or 0.32 will be our solution. But remember, it's negative. 0.32 is 1.6 times 0.2, but 0.2 times a negative 1.6 is going to be negative 32/100ths. Negative 0.32. In number 4, we have 1 7/10 multiplied by a negative 3 1/10. So a negative times a positive, our result is going to be negative. Let's go ahead and do the multiplication. We have 1.7 multiplied by a negative 3.1. 1 7/10 multiplied by 3 1/10. So because I have 2 digits here, I'm going to have a placeholder 0 as I'm adding. But for now, let's work through this. First, I'll do 7 times 1, which is 7. Then I'll move on and do 1 times 1, which is 1. And I'll be adding that to, here's my placeholder 0, 3 times 7, which is 21. However, I'm not just going to write 21 here, I'm going to write the 1 and carry the 2. And when I carry that 2, my 1 times 3 will get multiplied together, and that 2 will not get multiplied, it will get added. So 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 will give me 5. So I have 17 plus 510, which will be 527. But remember, these were decimals. 1.7 times 3.1, it seems a little unreasonable, or a lot unreasonable, that we would get 527 from multiplying those small values. So let's think about taking the decimal into account. We have 1 decimal place for our first number and 1 for our second number. So we're going to be moving that over 2 decimal places. So we'll have 5 and 27/100ths. And that's our result for 1.7 times 3.1. But we had 1.7 times a negative 3.1, so we're going to have negative 5 and 27/100ths as our solution in number 4. And let's think if this sounds reasonable. We knew that 520 was definitely not reasonable for 1 7/10 multiplied by 3 1/10. And you may be asking me, well, how do I know it's unreasonable? Well, what's 1.7 close to? 1.7 is pretty close to 2. And negative 3.1 is pretty close to a negative 3. So when I multiply 2 by a negative 3, I should get a number somewhere around negative 6. Negative 5 27/100 is reasonable for that. So just double check. If your number seems a little off to you, round your original values to whole numbers that are easier to work with and see if the number's close. Now in number 5, we have negative 4.6 multiplied by negative 7.2. Negative 4 6/10 multiplied by negative 7 2/10. A negative times a negative results in a positive. So I'm going to make a note that my result is indeed positive. So I'll have 4 6/10 and I'll multiply that by 7 2/10. Starting with my right column, 6 times 2 is 12. Write the 2, carry the 1. 4 times 2 is 8, and then we don't multiply, we add that to 1. So 8 plus 1 is 9. And that will all get added to placeholder 0 because now I'm working with this left digit. 7 times 6 is 42. Write my 2, carry my 4. This 1 was for the previous stuff, so I'll write my 4 above it. 4 times 7 is 28, plus 4 will be 32. Now I'll add this up. 2 plus 0 is 2, 9 plus 2 is 11, carry the 1, 1 plus 2 is 3, and then I have another 3. And before we even double check if this is reasonable, let's go back to the beginning. Negative 4.6 is kind of close to a negative 5. And negative 7.2 is kind of close to negative 7. So when we multiply that, you would expect to get around a positive 35. So we know 3,312 seems a bit ridiculous. A number close to 35 would be not 3.312, but 33.12. And we can confirm that that's going to be our number because we have 1 decimal place for our first number, 1 decimal place for our second number, so we would need to move 2 decimal places in our result to get to 33.12 or 33 12/100. So again, I remembered that I wrote that my answer was going to be positive, so I know it is indeed 33 12/100. 33.12 for our result in number 5. In number 6, we have some lengthier numbers. And I like to take the one with more digits as my top number over the one with fewer digits as my bottom number, just so that I don't have to write as many placeholder zeros. So I'll just do this multiplication as is. And a negative times a negative, let's make a note, that's a positive. So I'll have 5.928, and that gets multiplied by 11.6. Now if I want to, I can leave the decimal out of both the numbers when multiplying, as long as I remember to put them back in the end. So this has 3 decimal places, and this has 1 decimal place. So my final solution should have 4 decimal places. So 5.928 multiplied by 116. 8 times 6 is 48. Write the 8, carry the 4. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 4 is 16. So I'll write my 6 and carry my 1. 9 times 6 will be 54. Add that to 1, I'll get 55. So I'll write my 5, carry my 5. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 5 is 35. Now I have a placeholder 0, and I'll begin multiplying by 1. And I'll make a note that I've already used the 5, 1, and 4, just so I don't get confused when I carry over my numbers. So now that I have the placeholder, I'll do 8 times 1, which is 8. Then 2 times 1, which is 2. 9 times 1, which is 9. And 5 times 1, which is 5. And then, because this has 3 separate digits, I'm going to have to put not one placeholder, but 2 placeholders when I deal with this last digit, because it's 2 places over. So I'll do 1 times 8, which is 8, 2 times 1, which is 2, 9 times 1, which is 9, and then 5 times 1, which is 5. So scrolling down my screen a little bit, just so you can see, all of this will be added together. And I ran out of room to put my addition sign, but it's right next to this 5. So 8 plus 0 is 8, 6 plus 8 plus 0 is 14, so 4, carry the 1, 1 plus 5 is 6, 6 plus 2 plus 8 will be 6 plus 10, which is 16, carry the 1, 1 plus 5 is 6, 6 plus 9 is 15, 15 plus 2 is 17, carry the 1, 1 plus 3 is 4, 4 plus 5 is 9, 9 plus 9 is 18, so write my 8, carry my 1, and 1 plus 5 is 6. Now remember in the beginning, I said we would have 4 decimal places, so going over 1, 2, 3, 4, my solution is 68.7648. And was my solution positive or negative? Well, remember, negative times a negative is a positive. So in number 6, we have positive 68.7648, or 68 and 7,648 10,000ths. Moving on to number 7, we get a little bit easier again. Negative times negative, that results in a positive. So we'll have 1.5 times 7.1. 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. Now when dealing with the 7, I need to take into account my placeholder because it's one place to the left. So I'll do 5 times 7, which is 35. Write the 5, carry the 3. 1 times 7 is 7, plus 3 is 10. So I'll add this up. 5 plus 0 is 5. 1 plus 5 is 6. So 1,065. But wait, that seems very unreasonable. Let's go back. Remember, these are decimals. So if I rounded this up to about 2 and this to about 7, 2 times 7 should be roughly 14. So the number that I can create with 1065 that's closest to 14 would be 10.65. So let's double check. 1 decimal place for my first number, 1 decimal place for my second number. That's a total of 2 decimal places. Yep, it checks out. And remember, our solution is supposed to be positive, so 10 and 65 hundredths is indeed my solution for number 7. And number 8, positive times a positive, always a positive. So we'll just do 7 and 8 tenths times 5 and 1 tenth. 8 times 1 is 8, 7 times 1 is 7. Put my placeholder 0. 5 times 8 is 40, carry the 4. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 4 is 39. So when I add this together, I'll get 3978. But remember, I had 1 decimal place for each of my numbers. So I need to move a total of 2. So 39 and 78 hundredths, 39.78 is my solution in number 8. And it sounds reasonable. 7.8 is close to 8, and 5.1 is close to 5. 8 times 5 should be around 40. So it definitely checks out. In number 9, we're going to be multiplying 3 numbers together. But let's start with just multiplying 2. We have a negative times a positive. That's going to result in a negative. And again, just like when multiplying integers from our previous worksheet, the order in which we multiply doesn't matter. So we could have done 9 times 8.3 first. but I'm choosing just to work left to right for this problem. So 7.5 times 9, 5 times 9 is 45, write the 5, carry the 4, 7 times 9 is 63, plus 4 would be 67. And I only had one decimal place, so I'll move my decimal place over once. 67 and 5/10. And remember, that's going to be negative. So I have negative 67 and 5/10 multiplied by negative 8.3. A negative times negative, my result's going to be positive. So let me make a note that my result's going to be positive, and we'll multiply those two numbers together. 67.5 multiplied by 8.3. 5 times 3 is 15, carry the 1. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 1 gives us 22. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 2 is 20. And then I'll be adding that to, put my placeholder 0 because 8 is one place over. 8 times 5 is 40, write the 0, carry the 4. 7 times 8 is 56, plus 4 is 60, write the 0, carry the 6. 6 times 8 is 48, plus 6 is 54. So when I add this together, I'll get 56025. So now I just have to take account my decimals. I had one place, two places total, so moving it over 2 places, that would be 560.25. So my final solution I know is positive, so 560 and 25 hundredths, 560.25 is my solution in number 9. In number 10, again, I have 3 numbers. And remember, order doesn't matter, so let's go ahead and start with something easy that we should know how to do in our heads. Negative 9 times a positive 3, negative times a positive results in a negative, and 9 times 3 is 27. So I have negative 4.04 times a negative 27. I know that my result is going to be positive. I just got to figure out what the rest of that number is. So I'll go ahead and do 4.04 and multiply that by 27. 4 times 7 is 28, so I'll write my 8, carry my 2, 0 times 7 is 0, plus 2 is 2, and then 7 times 4 again is 28. Now I need to remember to write my placeholder 0, and I'll go ahead and cross out this 2 so we don't get confused because that's already been used. Now I wrote my placeholder 0 because we're working with the digit to the left of 7. That's one digit to the left of 7, so 1 placeholder 0. 2 times 4 is going to be 8, 0 times 2 is 0, and 4 times 2 is 8. So when I add those numbers together, 8 plus 0 is 8, 2 plus 8 is 10. So write my 0, carry my 1, 1 plus 8 is 9, and then 2 plus 8 is 10. So reasonably, thinking about this, if we took 4 as about 4 and 27, that's kind of hard to multiply by. Let's change that to a 25. We know that 4 times 25 gives us 100. So our answer should be around 100, which I think 109.08 suffices. But let's double check. We dealt with 2 decimal places in one number and 0 in the other number. So moving 2 decimal places, it checks out. So we'll have 109 and 8 hundredths. 109.08. That's my solution in number 10. In number 11, let's just go left to right. We have a positive times a positive, which results in a positive. So I'll do 3.2 times 8.7. When I multiply that, 2 times 7 is 14, carry the 1, 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22. Now I'll add my placeholder 0. 2 times 8 is 16, carry the 1. 3 times 8 is 24, plus 1 gives me 25. So 4 plus 0 is 4, 2 plus 6 is 8, 2 plus 5 is 7, 0 plus 2 is 2. So 2784, and I had 2 decimal places that I moved, one in the first number, one in the second, so I need to take that into account, 27.84. And again, that's positive. 27 and 84 hundredths, 27.84 times negative 1.1, 1 and 1/10. Positive times negative, I know my result is going to be negative. So now I just got to do that math. 27 and 84 hundredths, that will be multiplied by 1.1. And this is going to be pretty easy because I'm multiplying by 1 in each of my steps. So 4 times 1 is 4, 8 times 1 is 8, 7 times 1 is 7, 2 times 1 is 2. And I'll add that 2, remembering my placeholder. Now I'm dealing with this one. 1 times 4 is 4, 8 times 1 is 8, 7 times 1 is 7, 2 times 1 is 2. Adding this up, 4 plus 0 is 4, 8 plus 4 is 12. So write the 2, carry the 1, 1 plus 7 is 8, plus 8 is 16. Then I have 1 plus 2 plus 7, which will result in the number 10, and then 1 plus 2 is 3. Now, if you looked at 27.84 and 1.1, let's make a rough estimate of what that should be. 27, let's round up to 28, and 1, let's round down. So our number should be around 28. And the closest to that, wouldn't it be 30,624? Wouldn't it be 3,062.4? Wouldn't it be 306.24? It would be 30. So, double checking that, I moved my decimal over 1, 2, 3 places. So, negative 30 and 624 thousandths, negative 30.624 is my solution in number 11. Now, lastly, on to number 12. This is the last problem on this worksheet. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to click the thumbs up and like this video. And go ahead, while you're at it, subscribe to my channel. That way you're updated when I come out with new videos. So hopefully that you've done that. Let's complete number 12. I'll go ahead and go left to right. So I'll do 8.1 times 8.6 at the start. 8.1 times 8.6, positive times positive. 1 times 6 is 6. 8 times 6 is 48. So I'll write my 8 and 4. Then I'll be adding that to that placeholder 0. Don't forget, 1 times 8 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So I'll have 6. 8 plus 8 is 16. 1 plus 4 plus 4 will be 9. And then 0 plus 6 is 6. So 69.66. Because I have 2 decimal places, I need to move over 2 decimal places. So now I have 69 and 66 hundredths, and I'll be multiplying that by negative 5.2. So I know my result is going to be negative. Positive times negative is a negative. So I just have to do the math. 69 and 66 hundredths times 5.2. 5 and 2/10. 6 times 2 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. 2 times 9 is 18. Plus 1 is 19. Carry the 1. 2 times 6 is 12. Plus 1 is 13. Now with my placeholder 0, I'll go ahead and do 6 times 5. But before I do that, I'll cross these ones out so I know that I've already used them. 6 times 5 is 30. 0, carry the 3. 6 times 5 is 30. plus 3 is 33, so I'll write a 3, carry another 3. 9 times 5 is 45, plus 3 is 48. And then 6 times 5 is 30, plus that 4 that I carried will be 34. So when I sum this up, 2 plus 0 is 2, 3 plus 0 is 3, 9 plus 3 is 12, carry the 1, 1 plus 3 plus 8 is 12, carry the 1, 1 plus 1 plus 4 is 6, and then 3. And how many decimal places do I need to take into account? That's 1, 2, 3. So moving this over 3, 1, 2, 3, I'll get 362.232. 362 and 232 thousandths. But remember, it's negative, so I have negative 362.232 as my solution in number 12. And with that, we wrap up with this worksheet. As always, if you haven't done so, go ahead, like, subscribe, and share. If you want more ways to support me, click the Patreon link below and become a patron.